This podcast is for financial professional use only and is not intended for use with the public. Material is for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide tax, legal, or investment advice. The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of Ash Brokerage. Welcome to Accumulation to Activation, the podcast that breathes life into your retirement planning strategies. If you're an advisor aiming to elevate your practice, deepen client relationships, and stay ahead of retirement income trends, we'll help you capture the opportunities on your doorstep and increase your impact. Each episode, we'll unpack the forces reshaping our industry, from the $44 trillion generational wealth transfer and the evolution of income planning to behavioral shifts, legislative updates, and breakthrough solutions that redefine financial security. Here are your hosts, Mike McGlothlin and Tim Ash.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Accumulation to Activation, where we talk about everything in terms of turning employment into enjoyment. We talk about sales ideas, industry information. We hope that you've enjoyed the first several episodes. And again, if you like the content, please like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. As always, my co-host is Tim Ash. So welcome again, Tim.
Hey, thanks, Mike. It's great to be with everyone, and hard to believe we're approaching 11 episodes and excited about today's conversation.
One of the things that we mentioned, I think, previous or 2 episodes ago was to concentrate on the idea of qualified funds and just kind of resetting qualified funds. So I'll just turn it over to you. Talk a little bit about where we are in terms of qualified funds and why it's so important to most Americans right now, and especially their beneficiaries.
Sure. Well, again, thanks to the advisors that are tuning in, and we appreciate your involvement, your questions, and also helping us with content as we take on many topics. But qualified plans probably touch, if not 100% of every advisor's practice. It's probably 99%. And so everyone is advising on qualified plans. And, you know, as people are accumulating wealth and saving and planning for what's next, qualified plans have played a role. Whether it's a 403B, a 401k, an IRA, a SEP, it doesn't matter. And so now, as you see this large population of folks that are approaching retirement, in retirement, or going to have a very long retirement, these qualified dollars are always at the table of conversation. And so this is one of my favorite topics, and we have called it or coined it the Qualified Reset Plan. And really what that means is, how about we take a step back and assess what the client's needs are relative to their qualified plan. Do they need it for their income? Do they not want or need the income? Do they have proper planning set up? If they don't need the income, we don't want them to be accidental philanthropists, and we can talk about that later. But the point is, the qualified reset plan is to say, let's step back, take a look at what the client has, and see if there's a better way through conversation and looking at other instruments that we can help turn that asset into something bigger and better for their families. So that was a mouthful. Mike, if you have any comments or thoughts you'd like to add, I always appreciate your thought leadership.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think that the number bounces between $44 to $47 trillion sitting in qualified accounts right now. You take a look at the equity markets, which most people have some equities in their 401k, and take that out, 5, 10, 15 years. That's going to become a bigger number. And I think just about every American, $1 out of $3 is invested in somehow their qualified funds. So this is a major issue. As you said, you can go out and talk with any client about How are they going to transfer? And better yet, how are they going to use qualified money for their retirement plus pass on a legacy, whether it's to a charity or to the family? So you're spot on.
Yeah, I think that many advisors, they're going to be faced with this question. That money's going to be distributed some way, shape, or form, right? Through a systematic withdrawal, RMDs, or it's going to be transferred in the event or in the situation where someone passes, if both husband and wife have passed. And so what we're doing with the qualified reset strategy, and we're going to hit on 2 points today. I'm going to cover one. I'm going to ask you to cover the other as it relates to a very underutilized part of the tax code under the Secure Act. We'll get to that in a minute. But really, qualified reset that I'm going to cover is about, let's step back for a minute and take some notes if you're an advisor that's dialing in here. Who does this apply to? Okay, so someone that's 59 and a half and possibly even as old up through as age 80. Okay, so that's the window. People that have qualified plans, people that don't necessarily need that qualified plan for income. So I want you to be thinking about that. Which clients are you serving that have large balances, that have other assets or businesses or other income that they say, I really don't need this IRA or this 401k rollover for my lifestyle? So is there a better way to tackle that for the next generation? And the answer is yes. So what we like to use is arbitrage in this. And arbitrage comes from longevity-based products like income annuities, SPIAs, DIAs, fixed indexed annuities that have guaranteed benefits. And then we marry that with an insurance policy that's properly owned, properly structured, so that we can transition from taxable to tax-free to the next generation. And what we'd be more than happy to send out some ideas and some examples of some case studies, because I think it's more tangible when you can see it. You see the numbers, you see how the math works. And that's really what we're talking about, because the math does work. You can transition that qualified plan into a tax-free legacy and do it smartly over your lifetime, and also leave behind a terrific legacy.
That's what it's all about. And you hit a key thing at the very top. What does the client need? I was just reading Dr. Joe Coughlin's book, The Longevity Economy, and he talked about this generation wanting to spend more of its money, right? And so we need to come up with alternative ways in order to pass along the wealth that we didn't even have to think about in previous generations. I thought that was an interesting insight from the MIT Age Lab on that.
No, I think there is so much information out there. In fact, in preparation for the recording of the podcast, and I'm not the biggest techie here, but I know how to use Chat GPT and ask some questions. I ask questions about what do RMDs look like. I ask questions about Social Security. I ask questions about QLACs and all the other things that are out there. Do yourself a favor and just type in that simple question into one of these AI-powered engines. You'll be blown away by what you get back. But here's something, Mike, I'd like for you to hit on. And part of the qualified reset conversation should be around QLACs. I'd like for you to touch and hit on that. But before you do, there's this thing that are called mortality credits. Bonds don't have them. Equities don't have them. Only annuities have them. And mortality credits raise income because you're using the law of large numbers. Some people might pass sooner than expected. Some people are going to live to 95 or 100. And it's in that basket of mortality credits that you can convert a portion of someone's qualified plan and at least benefit from that. So could you touch on that? Because I think part of qualified reset is the QLAC, and maybe take the acronym and share what it is.
Yeah. The official one is Qualified Longevity Annuity Contract. I believe my new favorite one after yours is Quit Losing Your Assets, right? Which is exactly right, because at the end of the day, I think there's a couple misconceptions. First of all, when QLACs were first introduced back in 2014, 2015, there were two restrictions. There was a dollar amount and there was a percentage of qualified funds that you could do this with. And so for the average American, it didn't make a whole lot of difference. But in Secure Act 2.0, that percentage restriction was lifted. And so every American can put $210,000 into a qualified longevity annuity contract. That's a significant amount. And what that does is that allows you to take your qualified money and defer any income on that 210,000 to age 85 and 1 month. Okay, so what you're doing here is you're putting a tail and cutting the tail off of all of your longevity concerns. What if I outlive my money? What if my assets under management don't last? What about inflation? And these payouts in today's interest rate environment are absolutely phenomenal. That allows you as a financial planner to have a very defined period to manage money. If I'm retiring at 65, I know that I've got money coming in at age 85. I can manage that money better, as opposed to knowing, man, I may have to manage this to 100 to 105 for a couple, which is a realistic statistic according to the Longevity Vital Institute with Mark Pace. So just a big use for qualified annuity contracts that I don't think is getting the fair share. And it's clearly the most underutilized tool in the retirement income space, for sure.
Oh, I agree. In fact, I wrote this down in my notes. I do think it's the most underutilized tool in the toolkit for financial advisors. The other thing that, if you could touch on, there's a lot of noise going on out there. The Social Security Trust Fund is going to be at zero by 2033. And if that happens, 23% reduction in the payments of Social Security benefits. Now, a QLAC could be a terrific supplement for that. And again, here, let me give you one more softball to throw up here for you. How many clients reach out and say, "Gosh, how much do I have to take on the RMD? I don't want to. I don't, is there a way to delay it or defer it?" And you said it earlier. There used to be some rules and regulation, and you needed a slide rule to figure out how much you could put in a QLAC. Now it's Sesame Street simple. It's 210,000. It's inflation adjusted, so that's going to change in 26 and 27 and beyond. But it's 210,000 per person. So in a household, you have $420,000 that you could remove from the RMD conversation and defer that out and take that tail risk away. So you probably forgot my two questions because I've been rambling on, but fire away, Mike.
Yeah, I think Social Security integration is super important. I always go back to the nationwide client survey study where 92% of Americans say they will change financial planners if they do not have a conversation about how do I implement and maximize, optimize Social Security within my current assets. And QLAC is a great way to do that, because we have a very real possibility of having some level of reduction. Now, we know that Congress can do a lot of different things in terms of extending the age, increasing payroll taxes, doing all kinds of different stuff. But I always say the way that we know Congress is they'll get to 2032 before they address this, because they're a reactive entity. What you can do today is position a QLAC, and you have flexibility. It doesn't have to be all the way out to age 85 in 1 month. You can choose at age, whatever the age is, at 2033, when Social Security is supposed to reduce. and you can have your income start there. If we get to the point where Congress addresses this and there's not as large a reduction, you have a one-time 5-year deferral from that initial period, and you can kick it down the road. In fact, a good practice is that if you're doing any QLAC business, I always say use age 80 as your starting income date. That way you can move it up 5 years or you can move it back 5 years. That gives you a full 10 years of flexibility, because we all know things change. They absolutely change. And so it's just a great tool. It gives you flexibility. The other thing is that even though it is annuitization, it is a return of premium option if you choose to do that. So if you die early, like at age 85 in 2 months, then your beneficiaries get that balance. There's very little risk to the family in terms of positioning the QLAC, and tremendous upside on it no matter what.
I call it the smartest insurance policy to protect against longevity. And the cost of it is maybe some lost interest in what you allocate to that. So again, it's taking money off the table. This is money that is going to be spent anyway at some point in time. It's qualified money, which you started this podcast early. Trillions are in qualified plans. So as financial advisors, using the QLAC, using the Secure Act as a friend in your advisement practice, we think makes just a lot of sense. And again, this is just for a piece or a sliver of the portfolio. The other part of the qualified reset is to go to that client. Again, I'm going to do a repeat. 59 and a half to age 80 that has qualified money that they say, I really don't need it for my income. Is there a better solution? And what we can do is provide modeling for your practice, for your clients. Let's just get on the phone. And our retirement income consultants, our RVPs on the life side, they collaborate on this conversation and show how can we take qualified money, convert and transition it to a tax-free plan. I say tax-free forever. Forever's a long time, but at least we can get it to a couple of generations and do it in a very smart way. So that's my take on this. I'm most passionate about this because it's such a large market, and we as advisors in the financial services community need to be going out. I do say that, and we need to go out and educate, and that's what we're doing here on this podcast. That's our goal. But more importantly, we want to be alongside of you to help you have those conversations with your clients.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I think every advisor needs to get in their vernacular. We can turn tax deferred into tax free. We typically think that the Pension Protection Act would turn in non-qualified assets into qualified HIPAA long-term care. And if you have 2 of the 6 ADLs, then you're going to get all of that gain back tax-free. What a great way to do that from a qualified money through arbitrage. But also, even if you can do that from a guaranteed income standpoint, even though it's taxable within a long-term care event, that allows you 2 years to reposition assets and to maybe plan a little bit better. So it just is just another opportunity to leverage more assets, leverage the tools that are available, and then most importantly, you're going to cut off the tail of the unknown and make something known. And that's really makes financial planning so much easier when you can take off that unknown.
I couldn't agree more. And I know we're coming up to the time we want to keep these podcasts to a short commute or a drive or under 20 minutes or in that ballpark. But I asked someone on our team, Brendan Kelly, our senior vice president in the retirement division. I said, Brendan, could you please just, prior to this podcast, could you run I call it run a QLAC for me? So he gave me a 70-year-old male putting in $100,000 and delaying until age 80, like the age that you said, that's the smart age because you have that 5 year plus or minus that you can add to it. How much do you think the annual income is at age 80 from that $100,000? You don't have to answer, I'm going to tell you. It was almost $24,000 per year from an A-plus insurance company, Integrity Life, Western and Southern owned. 100,000 converted to 24,000 for their lifetime, even if they live to 100. That to me is, if you have someone that has $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, and again, we can do 210,000 per. What a smart way to add and take that tail risk off the table.
Yep. One final thing on this topic, just reminded me when you were talking, we do a study every year because so many times people are saying, hey, this doesn't really fit into my portfolio. As Tim just said, interest rates have increased over the last 3 or 4 years dramatically, huge payouts. But we actually did a study at ages 55, 60, 65, and 70 on $1 million portfolio. We went in and put a QLAC in at every one of those ages and started the income at age 80, like Tim did on that illustration. We improved the probability of success in 47 of the 48 cells in that study. The only one that we didn't was age 55 in the super aggressive asset allocation, which makes sense because of all the equity type of earnings. But what really surprised me is that those ages is 55 and 60, younger than you would think for an annuity, we were making 30, 40, 45% changes in the probability of outcomes for retirement. And so sometimes we just think of this as a 70-year-old for RMDs. It is about longevity, taking longevity off the table, not necessarily the interest rate, but taking that tail off. So I'm glad I forgot what you even said that triggered that, but I wanted to get that out. If you would like to see some of that study, shoot us an email. I'll be more than happy to shoot that out to you. So, all right. Guys, hey, thank you very much for listening. We appreciate the participation. As Tim said, we appreciate any type of feedback, any questions that you have, or things that you would like us to kind of knock around for 20 to 30 minutes. Again, if you like the content, please like, subscribe on your favorite platform, and we look forward to talking with you here in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
This episode of Accumulation to Activation was produced by Ash Brokerage. For more on the most pressing and critical issues facing financial advisors today, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a colleague. For more resources, visit us at ashbrokerage.com or reach out to our team at 800-589-3000. Let's start a strategic conversation about how you can be more efficient with your retirement income and legacy planning solutions. Insurance product guarantees are subject to the claims-paying ability of the issuing insurer. Annuities are insurance contracts and may be subject to fees, surrender charges, caps, spreads, participation rates, and tax implications. Withdrawals are taxable and, if taken prior to age 59 and a half, may be subject to an additional tax. Product availability and features vary by state and carrier. Social Security and tax rules are complex and subject to change. Clients should consult their tax and Social Security advisors. Any modeling or Monte Carlo analysis referenced is based on stated assumptions and are illustrative only. Results vary by client profile, market conditions, and product selection. Past or modeled results are not guarantees of future outcomes.